One day, George was coming back from work in his sleek black limousine, the gold chain around his neck gleaming as the city lights reflected off it. As the car cruised through the bustling streets, he leaned back, scrolling through his phone and sipping on an imported drink. But suddenly, the limousine came to a screeching halt. The driver turned around, his face pale. "Sir, there's a problem," he stammered, curious and slightly annoyed. George opened the door to step out. The scene before him was unlike anything he had expected. The scene before George was baffling. His sleek limousine was stopped in the middle of an empty road, one that should have been bustling with the evening rush. The streetlights flickered erratically, casting long, distorted shadows. "What's going on?" The driver didn't answer. He was staring ahead, frozen, his trembling hand gripping the wheel. George followed his gaze and saw a terrified figure standing motionless in the middle of the road. The person was shrouded in a dark, tattered cloak, their face obscured by a hood. "Is this some kind of joke?" George muttered, stepping closer. His gold chain clinked as he moved, a stark contrast to the eerie stillness. The figure suddenly raised an arm, pointing directly at George before he could say a word. The ground beneath him seemed to shift, carrying with it whispers, unfamiliar voices calling his name George, and a cold wind whipped around him. George's curiosity outweighed his fear. The voices echoed, chilling him to the core, adjusting his gold chain as if it were a talisman of protection. He stepped forward. "What do you want?" The figure didn't respond. Instead, they tilted their head as if studying him. The closer George got, the heavier the air seemed to grow. Pressing down on his chest, he stopped a few feet away, squinting to see the face beneath the hood. "Listen, I don't have time for games," George said, irritation creeping into his voice. "Who are you?" The figure slowly extended a hand, palm up. In it lay a small, intricately carved object, a key, glowing faintly with a soft, silvery light. "This is yours," the figure said in a voice that sounded like a blend of many, layered and otherworldly. "Take it, and the truth will find you." George hesitated, his hand hovering over the key. A strange warmth radiated from it, inviting yet unnerving. "Truth? What truth?" The figure stepped back, fading into the shadows. "Take it, George. But once you do, there's no turning back." The whispers in the wind grew louder as George's fingers closed around the key. The moment he touched it, the world around him shifted, his vision blurred, and the street dissolved into darkness. When his sight cleared, George found himself standing in a place he didn't recognize. The air was thick with an unearthly glow, and a massive, ancient door stood before him, its surface covered in strange runes. The key pulsed in his hand, urging him forward. George gripped the glowing key tightly, his mind racing. The door before him radiated an unsettling energy, and every fiber of his being screamed to turn back. "Held!" he shouted, his voice echoing endlessly in the strange, glowing expanse. "Is anyone there? I need help." His words faded into the eerie silence. George turned around, searching for any sign of familiarity. But the landscape stretched infinitely in every direction, a pale, shimmering void that seemed to swallow sound and light. "This can't be real," he muttered, his chest tightening. "It's a bad dream. That's all it is." He started walking, shouting louder. "Somebody, help me, anyone." The whispers returned, louder this time, weaving through his words. "You cannot run from the truth, George. Panic surged through him. He tried to throw the key away, but it clung to his hand, glowing brighter with every passing moment. His breaths came in short, ragged gasps as he broke into a run, hoping against hope that he'd find an exit. Suddenly, the shimmering void rippled like water, and a new figure emerged, a tall, shadowy silhouette with glowing, piercing eyes. "You're wasting your time," the figure said in a voice that sent chills down George's spine. "There is no escape, only the path forward." George froze, trembling. "Who are you? What is this place?" The figure stepped closer. its form becoming clearer, a strange blend of human and something far older, far darker. You hold the key, George. Your only choice is to use it, or remain lost here, forever. George squared his shoulders, his usual confidence returning despite the bizarre situation. All right, whoever or whatever brought me here, I'm not playing your game without answers, he said aloud, his voice echoing through the surreal landscape. He began scanning his surroundings, trying to make sense of the alien world. The floating islands were connected by narrow, glowing bridges that seemed to shimmer with instability. Strange plants with translucent leaves pulsed faintly, as if alive, and glowing orbs floated lazily in the golden sky, humming softly. On the stone path beneath his feet, George noticed symbols, carved into the surface, runes, similar to those on the door and key. He crouched down, tracing them with his fingers. The moment he touched one, it flared brightly, and a vision flashed before his eyes. He saw himself in his office, signing contracts, his gold chain glinting under the fluorescent lights. Then the image shifted. Shadowy figures surrounded him, their faces obscured. A deep, menacing voice whispered, "The truth was always in front of you." The vision ended abruptly, leaving George disoriented. "What truth?" he growled, shaking his head. "What are you trying to tell me?" As he rose, a faint glimmer caught his eye, a small shard of what looked like crystal lying at the edge of the path. Picking it up, he noticed it refracted the golden light into vibrant colors. As he turned it over in his hand, he realized it wasn't just a shard. It was a piece of something larger. Nearby, he saw markings on one of the glowing bridges, a symbol identical to the shard's shape. "This has to mean something," George muttered, gripping the shard tightly. "Looks like I'm going that way." With cautious steps, he approached the bridge, the shard pulsing faintly in his hand.